The transport deck of the Valorous Dawn hummed with the familiar vibration of sublight engines as commander. Elara Chen made her way through the narrow corridor. The refugee hold smelled of synthetic air and too many bodies crammed into too little space. A sense she'd grown grimly familiar with over the past 3 months of evacuation operations. She carried her evening rations in a standard-issue container, protein paste, reconstituted vegetables, and a precious square of compressed fruit bar. Not much, but more than most civilians had seen in weeks. The Thyran refugees huddled in family clusters, their blue-gray fur matted and dull from malnutrition. The war had come to their system without warning and automated. Von Neumann's swarm that consumed 3 worlds before the Galactic Coalition could mount a defense. These survivors represented less than 2% of their species population. Elara had learned to eat her meals while walking the holds. It kept morale up to see the human crew visible and active, even if the refugees couldn't understand the gesture. The Thyan were a proud species, unused to charity or defeat. That she was halfway through the main hold when movement caught her eye, quick and desperate. A small form darted from behind a supply crate, tiny clawed hands reaching for her ration container. The Thyan cub couldn't have been more than 6 standard years old, his fur patchy with stress shedding, ribs visible beneath a thin covering. His large eyes dark and liquid locked onto the food with an intensity that made Elara's chest tighten. He was fast, but human reflexes, honed by Earth's heavy gravity and predator-rich evolutionary history, were faster. Elara's hand moved without conscious thought, intercepting the small grasping paws. The cub froze, trembling. Around them, the hold went silent. Adult Thyan turned away, ears flat against their skulls, the universal gesture of their species for deep shame. The cub's mother made a low keening sound, her own emaciated frame struggling to rise. Elara understood immediately. In Theran culture, stealing food was one of the gravest dishonors, particularly for a child. The shame would mark the cub for life, a stain on his family's honor that could never be fully erased. She had perhaps 3 seconds before that shame crystallized into permanent trauma. Humans, she had learned, processed social situations faster than most species, a remnant of their pack-hunting ancestors who needed to read intent and emotion in fractions of a heartbeat. "Oh, there you are," Elara said loudly in Galactic Standard, her voice bright with manufactured relief. She dropped to one knee, bringing herself to the cub's eye level. "I've been looking everywhere for my meal partner." The cub stared at her, confusion replacing the horror in his eyes. Around them, Thyran ears perked up slightly. Elara popped open her ration container and broke everything precisely in half with deliberate ceremony. "See, I saved your portion. We have a tradition on my ship: nobody eats alone. It's bad luck." She pressed half the rations into the cub's trembling hands. "Go on, take it. You're doing me a favor by sharing." The lie was as transparent as whole-grade plasteel, but it provided what humans called plausible deniability, a social fiction that allowed dignity to be preserved. The Thyran didn't have a direct equivalent concept, but they recognized the gift when they saw it. The cub's mother approached slowly, her movements stiff with malnourishment and pride. She placed a paw on her son's shoulder, then met Elara's eyes. The Thyan had difficulty reading human expressions, but the slight bow of the mother's head needed no translation. "Your pack bond customs are generous, Commander Chen," the mother said in halting standard. "We will remember this kindness." "No kindness," Elara replied firmly, taking a bite of her hut. "Just tradition. Tomorrow, same time." She directed the question at the cub, who nodded frantically while stuffing protein paste into his mouth with both hands. As Elara stood and continued her rounds, she felt dozens of dark Thyan eyes following her. By the time she reached a far bulkhead, 3 more cubs had appeared at their parents' sides. Looking at her with tentative hope, she sighed and tapped her cum badge. "Chen to galley. I'm going to need additional ration allocations for the next week. Authorization code, Chansavan Gamma Commander. You're already at minimal caloric intake." The galley officer replied. "Medical won't approve further reductions, and take it from my personal stores. And send a memo to the crew voluntary meal sharing program with refugee families. Anyone interested should report their participation to my office." He paused. "Make it clear that participation will be noted positively in service records." Within an hour, 47 crew members had volunteered. By the next morning, that number had grown to 112, nearly a third of the ship's complement. The Thyran elders gathered to discuss this strange human behavior. They had studied Earth's history during the voyage, trying to understand their rescuer. What they learned troubled them. Humans were persistent predators from a death world, capable of extreme violence and competition. Yet here they were, voluntarily starving themselves to preserve the pride of refugee children. They hunt in packs, one elder observed. Perhaps they see us as pack now. Or perhaps, another suggested, humans understand that shame kills more surely than starvation, and they have evolved to prevent both. In the commander's quarters, Elara Chen divided her dinner ration into thirds and wrapped 2 portions for tomorrow. Her stomach growled with complaint, but she ignored it. She'd gone hungrier during survival training on Titan. Besides, humans had another evolutionary advantage. They were spite-fueled endurance machines who could survive on determination alone when necessary. She'd be damned if any child under her protection would feel shame for the crime of hunger. The valorous Dawn continued its journey to the resettlement worlds, its holds filled with refugees who were learning that humans, for all their capacity for violence, possessed an equally powerful capacity for compassion and the strategic wisdom to know which weapon to deploy.